Welcome to Matthew Moran's Educational Workshop. The point of this workshop is to help clear up material that may be confusing for students at various levels of education and for various subjects. Some textbooks try their very best to communicate material in a way they think is clear, and yet students still struggle with all kinds of information. Sometimes it takes a fresh approach to make material less confusing, as educators tend to exist in bubbles. All they see is the terminology that encompasses their field of study. The terms and lingo make sense to them, but it can all overlap with other subjects and create confusion for students. So, what subject will we be covering today? Psychology, the study of the mind and how it interacts with the body. Psychology is such a large and diverse field, so what specifically about psychology will we be covering? What we are focusing on today falls under behaviorism and was pioneered by B.F. Skinner. Skinner examined the relationship between antecedent events and behavior, and usually did so with animals in what have come to be referred to as Skinner boxes. In these boxes, Skinner explored how reinforcement and punishment function. In order to talk about this, we must first define the terms reinforcement and punishment. What is reinforcement? Reinforcement occurs when a response to something in an environment is followed by a stimulus change that results in similar responses occurring more often in the future. Well, that's a nice technical definition, but an example will help to convey what reinforcement is. Let's say that a child is asking for a candy bar at a checkout line in the grocery and uses the word please. The parent says, "Great job using your polite words." This, in and of itself, is reinforcement for the child to use polite words when asking for something. The behavior occurs and the consequence of praise follows. Now, if the parent buys the candy bar for the child, the reinforcement will be even more potent, and in this case twofold. Both praise and the candy bar serve as reinforcement. What is punishment? Punishment occurs when a response to something in the environment is followed by a stimulus change that results in similar responses occurring less often in the future. Well, that's a nice technical definition, but again, an example will help to convey what punishment is. Let's say that a child is asking for a candy bar at the checkout line in the grocery and the parent declines the request. The child throws a tantrum at the checkout line, embarrassing the parent. The parent stops what they are doing and scolds the child. In many cases, scolding is all it takes and the child will recover. The scolding is a punishment meant to reduce the behavior of throwing a tantrum after not getting what was desired. Great, but that's not the confusing part. We have all been reinforced and punished by our parents and caregivers and likely know very well the difference between the two concepts. I've been paddled, spanked, and had my toys taken away as consequences for bad behavior. I've been given money for good grades, had driving privileges restored, and extra chores removed as reward for good behavior. However, in all my examples, there are some minute differences that lead to the confusion. So this is where it gets tricky for most students in an introduction to psychology class and most people in general. This is because there are both positive and negative aspects to both reinforcement and punishment. But what does that mean? How does positive and negative work in terms of reinforcement and punishment? Is it like the positive and negative ends of a battery? No, it is not that. Is it like the plus and minus buttons on a computer keyboard? No, it is not that. Well, is it like speaker wire? No, it is not that. Is it about how someone feels about reinforcement and punishment? No, it's still not that. Is it about the amount of money in my personal bank account? No, it's not that either. Alright, that was funny and all, but the confusion is real. Every time I have taught Intro to Psych, this is a problem. Students would get negative and positive reinforcement and negative and positive punishment all mixed up. Like, how can punishment be positive? Sure, the result might be positive, but punishment as a word has negative connotations, as does reinforcement with positive connotations, and this is where the confusion starts. Students see reinforcement as positive and punishment as negative. So let's get into exactly how the words positive and negative work with reinforcement and punishment. So let's get into exactly how this works. Positive means something is given in a reinforcement or punishment scenario, and negative means something is taken away in a reinforcement or punishment scenario. Here are some examples of each. In a positive reinforcement scenario, a child is rewarded with a new toy after keeping the peace with their brother for a whole week. Here, a reward is added, and as a consequence, the behavior should be more likely to happen in the future. In a negative reinforcement scenario, a child finds out that because they kept the peace with their brother for a whole week, they do not have to take out the trash for a whole week. Here, an aversive chore is removed, and as a consequence, the behavior should be more likely to happen in the future. In a positive punishment scenario, a child is punished for fighting with their brother by making that child do the dishes for a week. Here, a chore is added, and as a consequence, the behavior should be less likely to happen in the future. In a negative punishment scenario, a child has his toys taken away because they were fighting with their brother. Here, toys are removed, and as a consequence, the behavior should be less likely to happen in the future. This is a workshop, so let's look at this a different way and then evaluate whether or not this new way is effective. One thing that I have noticed is that in psychology textbooks, authors like to use what looks like little equations. For even just this class, little equations are used to explain how behavior works with reinforcement and punishment. They are designed to show the progression through a chain. Behavior usually starts with an antecedent event, such as someone asking a question or hands you something to look at. Already we have time and things or speech as variables. Then comes the behavior in the form of a response or action, yet another variable. After that, we are left with the result of the scenario, the consequence. This is the basic structure of behavior and is usually displayed in an equation-like form, such as this. In this form, it shows the direction of events and reads like math. Here is another. This one describes how discriminative stimulus brings about a response and then is reinforced. The same is true for punishment. And then here is another to denote positive or negative reinforcement or punishment. Now we are even adding plus and minus symbols. More math vibes. This is great, but where is all of this happening? As stated in our textbook, all behavior occurs in an environment, involves movement, and can be measured. Since math vibes are being used to explain the relationship between events and behavior within an environment, let's take it a step further and use more math vibes. We have an antecedent event represented by the letter A. Then we have the behavior represented by the letter B, which is always followed by its consequence, represented by the letter C. And continuing with our math vibes, let's add the letter E representing the environment. So now we have the antecedent leads to the behavior, which leads to the consequence, and it all happens within an environment. Well, this looks nice and all, but wasn't the point to all of this about the potential confusion regarding positive and negative aspects of reinforcement and punishment? Yes, of course it is. And it is what led to the use of math to help keep it straight in this example. Remember that we are adding or taking away something to create a negative positive aspects of behavior analysis. We are thinking in terms of an equation, and we are dealing with the words positive and negative. We are adding and subtracting things to or from the environment. Something is added to the environment in positive reinforcement. Something is added to the environment in positive punishment. Something is subtracted from the environment in negative reinforcement. Something is subtracted from the environment in negative punishment. I think that if we change the terminology to additive and subtractive from positive and negative, it should clear up the confusion. The words positive and negative carry those connotations that build up as we progress through life, and in this case is likely creating the confusion holding students back from understanding the material more easily. Well, I certainly appreciate you sitting through this presentation, but now it's time for the feedback. Is this an effective teaching strategy? Did it convey the material in a clearer way? Was this easier to understand? Did Math Vibes make this better or worse? Please take the time to reply to this post and let me know what you think about this teaching strategy. And here are the references I used. Thank you very much for sitting through this.